World leaders have called for solidarity to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic, concrete measures to tackle the climate crisis and commitments to ensure global peace as part of the high-level general debate of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party secured a victory in Monday's parliamentary elections but fell short of the desired majority. Taliban authorities have announced the remaining positions in the new all-male cabinet of Afghanistan. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Katrina Goss. High-level general debate of the 76th session of the United Nations General Assembly is underway in New York. Under the theme Building Resilience Through Hope to Recover from COVID-19, Rebuild Sustainably, Respond to the Needs of the Planet, Respect the Rights of People and Revitalise the United Nations, the 76th general debate addresses pressing issues affecting the international community, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, vaccination rollout and preparedness ahead of future health crises. Climate change and action to tackle it are also expected to be a key feature of the discussions. This year, because of the pandemic, world leaders were invited to send in pre-recorded videos of their speeches, which are broadcast as live. However, several countries are also attending the debate in person with limited delegations. During the opening of the general debate, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres presented the annual report on the activities of the organisation. He said the climate crisis and COVID-19 have revealed the deep vulnerabilities that continue to exist around the world.
Our world has never been more threatened or more divided. We face the greatest cascade of crises in our lifetimes. The COVID-19 pandemic has supersized the glaring inequalities. The climate crisis is pummeling the planet. Upheaval from Afghanistan to Ethiopia to Yemen and beyond has thwarted peace.
The UN chief also highlighted the ongoing abuses and attacks on human rights around the world, as well as on science and solidarity.
Human rights are under fire and science is under assault. And the economic lifelines for the most vulnerable are coming too little and too late, if they come at all. Solidarity is missing in action just when we need it most.
On addressing the United Nations General Assembly, the President of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Félix Tshisekedi, praised the importance of international solidarity to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic and to guarantee the future of humankind.
This in-person meeting is encouraging. It allows us to hope for a return to normal life in our countries. And this thanks to the talent of our scientists and the shared efforts of our states in remarkable international solidarity. We must step up these efforts and bolster this solidarity to truly, definitively overcome the COVID pandemic, to relaunch growth in our economies and to ensure a better future for the people of our planet.
The Congolese president also highlighted the efforts made in the African continent to fight the pandemic.
Victory against COVID-19 will only be possible and enduring if we fight together and if we reach herd immunity, which is sufficient to protect the whole of humanity. For its part, Africa is not sitting back. It does not intend to surrender against any kind of fatality. Quite the contrary. Africa has set up a joint continental strategy against COVID-19. In this context, Africa has created a COVID-19 response fund and launched a platform for medical supplies to guarantee that all its countries have access to the necessary equipment and supplies.
In his first official address to the United Nations General Assembly as US President, Joe Biden emphasised the great pain and losses that the COVID-19 pandemic has caused around the world.
We meet this year in a moment of intermingled with great pain and extraordinary possibility. We've lost so much to this devastating pandemic that continues to claim lives around the world and impact so much on our existence. we're mourning more than 4.5 million people, people of every nation, from every background. Each death is an individual heartbreak, but our shared grief is a poignant reminder that our collective future will hinge on our ability to recognize our common humanity and to act together.
The US President also underlined his administration's efforts to return to international forums.
We're back at the table in international forums, especially the United Nations, to focus attention and to spur global action on shared challenges. We are re-engaged at the World Health Organization and working in close partnership with COVAX to deliver life-saving vaccines around the world. We rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement, and we're running to retake a seat in the Human Rights Council next year at the UN.
During his address to the UN General Assembly, President of Iran, Ebrahim Raisi, underlined the right of all nations to defend themselves against foreign interference and occupation.
The solution to skirmishes and conflicts in our region lies in the following: making the will of nations rule over their own destiny by referring to the results of public vote. But in order for this to materialize, two basic preconditions need be met. One, halting the aggressions of the outsiders and occupation. And two, the sincere cooperation of governments to counter terrorism.
The Iranian head of state also referred to the situation in Afghanistan and the necessity of an inclusive government that takes into consideration all ethnicities in the vast Central Asian country.
The military presence of the United States in Syria and Iraq is the biggest hindrance to the establishment of democracy and will of nations. Freedom does not fit in the backpacks of soldiers coming from outside the region. If an inclusive government having an effective participation of all ethnicities shouldn't emerge to run Afghanistan, security will not be restored to the country. And like occupation, paternalism is also doomed to failure.
And during his speech at the 76th session of the UN General Assembly, President of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, referred to the situation experienced by the people of Afghanistan after 20 years of foreign occupation and underlined the responsibility that the international community should bear regarding the current circumstances of the country.
We witnessed, lastly, in Afghanistan, in a very painful way, that the problems cannot be solved by imposing methods that do not take into account the realities and the social fabric on the ground or in the field. The people of Afghanistan have been left alone. They were abandoned with the consequences of instability and the conflicts that have lasted for more than 4 decades. Regardless of the political process, Afghanistan needs the help and solidarity of the international community. We hope that peace, stability, and security will be established in the country as soon as possible, and that the Afghan people will find relief.
And we'll be right back after this very short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The results of Canada's early parliamentary elections were not much different from those held in 2019. Despite his Liberal Party winning, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau failed to secure the parliamentary majority that he'd sought through this snap election. We have more details with our correspondent Pablo Vivanco.
Although counting is still underway in certain contested areas, the results from Canada's 44th federal election look almost identical to those previous ones in 2019. Justin Trudeau's Liberals retain their minority government, having gained only 1 seat compared to the previous election results. However, the governing party appears to have won less total votes along with a lower share of the vote and will once again finish second in the popular vote to the Conservatives. This will be another disappointing finish for the Conservatives, who are on pace to lose 2 seats in spite of winning the popular vote. And there are signs that Aaron O'Toole may face challenges to his leadership. The regional party, the Bloc Québécois, look poised to gain 2 seats, whereas the center-left New Democrats have improved their outcome by only 1 seat. The status quo results would indicate that voters have not been significantly persuaded by Trudeau nor by his opponents. Canadians have not given Prime Minister Trudeau the mandate and majority government that he wanted when he called snap elections weeks ago. And there may be calls within the ruling Liberal parties to review his leadership in the coming months. Nonetheless, the Liberals will need to obtain the support of at least one of the other major parties for any major initiatives. Pablo Ivanko from Toronto, Canada, for teleSUR.
Thank you, Pablo. And Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau thanked voters for their support on learning of his party's victory.
The moment we face demands real, important change. And you have given this Parliament and this government clear direction. If you voted for our party, thank you. Thank you for putting your trust in our team to keep moving forward for everyone. And if you did not vote for us, I want you to know that we will stand up for you and work for you every single day.
The United Russia Party won the parliamentary elections to the State Duma, gaining 112 seats in the lower house. According to the Central Election Commission, with 100% of cast ballots processed, United Russia secured 49.82% of the vote. The Communist Party came second after securing 18.93% of the vote, and the Liberal Democratic Party was third with 7.55%. Meanwhile, a Just Russia for Truth Party and the New People Party secured 7.46% and 5.32% of the vote respectively. 5 parties have made it to the State Duma, passing the electoral threshold of 5% of the vote. The elections were held from Friday to Sunday. Argentina's Health Minister Carla Bisotti announced the relaxation of health measures put in place to contain the COVID-19 pandemic, including the end of the obligation to wear masks in the open air and the progressive opening of borders.
Use of face mask is no longer obligatory in the open air when moving around with the crowds of people. From 1st October, we plan to authorize the entry of foreigners from neighboring countries without no need for isolation and the gradual opening of land borders.
A new shipment of 675,000 doses of Russia's Sputnik vaccine arrived in Venezuela this Tuesday, where it was received by the Venezuelan health minister and the Russian ambassador to the country.
This is the 11th shipment of vaccines we received from the Russian Federation. 1 million second doses that were missing have arrived. Our grandfathers, grandmothers, and elderly people should be at ease because we already have all the second doses that we were missing. As they had offered, before the end of September, we are all ready to continue to roll out of these second doses. We are here in Maiquetía, receiving the 3rd flight of September. We received 2 Conviasa flights of a Venezuelan airline, and now the Russian airline Azur came, which brought in total more than 1 million second doses of the best Sputnik V vaccine, which has arrived in Venezuela.
Cuba agreed to provide Vietnam with 10 million doses of its homegrown coronavirus vaccine Abdala, for which the Asian nation has given emergency approval. The deal was signed between the two countries during an official visit by President Nguyen Xuan Phuc to the island. The agreement concerns an initial 5 million doses, but Vietnam's already authorised a purchase of 10 million doses. Vietnam became the first country to approve the emergency use of Abdala, which Cuba is already using along with Soberana O2, another locally developed vaccine. Last week, the island started the process of seeking World Health Organization endorsement both shots.
Many cooperation agreements have been signed on this occasion. It can be said that it is a very successful visit in all areas: political, diplomatic, economic, commercial, and especially on this occasion, health.
The Abdala vaccine has been endorsed by the Vietnamese regulatory agency, which is also fair to say that there is a tradition of Cuba Biotechnology working with the Vietnamese regulatory agency and Vietnamese companies, because we also exchanged or marketed the recombinant vaccine against hepatitis V, the vaccine, which means that we can say that this project is a project of continuity, which is also a project of modernity, because everything has been evolving.
The number of people in the United States who've died as a result of COVID-19 could surpass the fatalities caused by the 1918 Spanish flu outbreak, according to a count by Johns Hopkins University. Approximately 675,000 people have died from the coronavirus in the United States, and scientists believe the virus will never entirely disappear. Experts hope it will become a mild seasonal bug as immunity strengthens through vaccines and repeated infections. The 1918-19 influenza pandemic killed 50 million people globally at a time when the world had 1/4 the population it does now, while global deaths from COVID-19 now stand at more than 4.6 million. The lessening of COVID-19 could happen if the virus progressively weakens as it mutates and more humans' immune systems learn to attack it. Vaccination and surviving infection are the main ways the immune system reaction improves. And we have more stories coming up after this final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Taliban on Tuesday announced the remaining positions in its all-male cabinet. The group did not heed to the pressures of the international community, which warned it would be judged by its actions and that foreign recognition would be linked to the treatment of women and minorities in Afghanistan. A Taliban spokesperson presented the list of new names at a press conference in the Afghan capital of Kabul. Sawihullah Mujahid defended the expansion of the cabinet, saying it included members of ethnic minorities such as Hazaras. He also said that women might be added later. In the meantime, Taliban leaders announced girls will be allowed to return to school as soon as possible. And staying in Afghanistan, a father who lost his daughter and 10 family members to a US drone strike is demanding compensation and has stressed that an apology from the White House is not enough. The statements come after the Pentagon acknowledged and apologised for the crime committed on August 29th, which it referred to as a tragic mistake.
First of all, the US should not carry out attacks in a residential area, even if there are criminals there. And after carrying out the attack, the problem cannot be solved with an apology. They should come to compensate the victims because the Afghan people are in poverty. Therefore, a simple apology to those who have been harmed and have lost their families is not enough.
In Palestine, citizens protested in several cities in the occupied West Bank in solidarity with Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli jails. Demonstrations took place in front of the International Committee of the Red Cross headquarters, demanding the organisation act immediately and provide protection to Palestinian prisoners who are suffering abuses at the hands of the Israeli regime. In particular, demonstrators called for the protection of the 6 prisoners who escaped from Jubara prison, who suffered severe torture after their arrest. Protesters also called for the international community to pressure Israel to end its policy of administrative detentions. The United States is deploying around 2,000 troops to Iraq, despite announcing plans to end its combat mission in the country. Soldiers from the 4th Infantry Division will replace the 256th Infantry Brigade combat team of the Louisiana Army National Guard for a 9-month period and become the primary U.S. force for the entire country. According to the Pentagon, the soldiers will provide security and protection, assist and advise Iraqi security forces, provide air defences against attacks, and train partner forces in the nation. In July, U.S. President Joe Biden announced the country's combat mission would conclude by the end of the year, but the US military would retain a presence in Iraq to train and advise its forces. Sudanese authorities have reported a failed attempt to overthrow the country's transitional government, blaming military officers and civilians from the former government of deposed President Omar al-Bashir. Sudan's Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok addressed the attempted coup which took place early Tuesday. He described it as an extension of previous attempts to overthrow the transitional government created after longtime leader al-Bashir was removed from power in 2019. Authorities arrested leaders of the failed plot, which involved military officers and civilians belonging to the former regime. Sudan has been on a fragile path to democratic rule since the military's ouster of the country's longtime ruler Omar al-Bashir following 4 months of mass protests. The country is now governed by a joint civilian and military government that faces towering economic and security challenges. And we've come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss. Thank you for watching.